September the 25th sees the release of The Many Saints of Newark, the long-awaited spin-off of the smash hit TV series The Sopranos. The Sopranos is a landmark in American television, as the Mafia TV show essentially spearheaded and paved the way for modern hit TV shows like Game of Thrones and True Detective. It is truly one of the best TV series ever made, there's no doubt about it. There was always some side talk of maybe a spin-off, maybe a sister series, or even a movie. But as time went on, and with the death of James Gandolfini, the man who played the main character Tony Soprano in the show, it seemed the chance for fans to return to the world of The Sopranos was next to none, until it was announced that a prequel film was being made, featuring some returning characters from the show but being played by younger actors. It seems such a bizarre idea to not set a film or show based on any of the New York families or what happened after the show ended, but before the show even started. Then again, The Sopranos has such impressive world building, and there's so many things alluded to in the timeline of the show before it starts that there is still room for a decent self-contained story to be told in movie format, whilst adding to the lore of The Sopranos. That being said, making a movie of the show set before the show and not starring any of the actors who have now become beloved to Sopranos audiences, and being made 13 years after the show finished, it does beg the question as to whether it will be any good. Similar things have been done, of course. Breaking Bad got a movie after the series ended, but that came out only a few years later, when the show was still fresh in the minds of fans. Deadwood also got a movie after the series ended, many years after the show stopped, but with that, it was a movie to conclude the story after the series was cancelled, so there was a good reason for it. Of course, one of the big questions that pops up is this film even necessary? Why do we need a film set before season 1, when Tony was not only not even a boss, but still a kid? When we know how everything will end up, what's the point? It's a valid claim, I guess, but surely you could make the argument against any film. Does any movie need to be made? And even if you narrow your criteria to sequels and additions in franchises that came after a self-contained story, or many years after a film, there's still plenty of examples of movies that technically aren't necessary, but still are terrific films. Movies like Aliens, Blade Runner 2049, and Mad Max Fury Road. And one of the best things about a film that isn't necessary, when you think of it in that way, is that you can disregard it if you don't end up liking it. Just etch it out of existence in your own headcanon. Saying that though, it is still possible for a sequel or prequel to ruin a classic film, in a manner of speaking. Once a movie is finished, it's finished. If you don't care for what comes next, you can disregard it, but the thing is, the sequel still exists. Like how Alien 3 pissed off a lot of people for killing Newt and Hicks, or how Prometheus made the xenomorph a bioweapon instead of an extraterrestrial thing. When you go back and watch the original, no matter how many times someone says the sequel shouldn't affect your enjoyment of the original, sometimes you just can't get it out of your head, and it does ruin the original. As such, there might be some retcon that occurs in Newark that really pisses fans off, and they just can't look at a certain character or scene in The Sopranos the same way. Imagine if it turns out that Paulie Walnuts used to cross-dress in his youth, or Phil Leotardo did 20 weeks in the can as opposed to 20 fucking years. It's a risky film. It doesn't need to exist and can cause a lot of harm if not done right. And with it coming out so long after the original, it's going to be difficult for fans to swallow if certain changes are made or revelations made that we didn't expect, which is surely likely. Of course, it could work the other way as well, in that something happens in The Many Saints of Newark that makes fans look at something in Sopranos differently, but in a positive way. I mean, the story in Newark is going to be centered around Dickie Moltisanti and his relationship with future New Jersey mob boss Tony Soprano, Dickie being the father of Tony's protege, Christopher. One of the most talked about subplots of The Sopranos involves Tony giving the order to Christopher to kill his father's murderer, a retired cop, but many have questioned if he really was the murderer. Perhaps Newark will shed some light on this, or the relationship between Dickie and Tony will strengthen scenes in The Sopranos. Like say, for example, if there is a scene where Dickie tells Tony to look after Christopher if anything bad happens to him, that would make the action of Tony killing Christopher eventually in The Sopranos all the more deplorable. Or maybe it turns out Tony is the one who killed Dickie, however unlikely that is. It might not be a film that is needed, but it's easy enough to say that before you see it, and see what happens in it. For sure, there must be some story the filmmakers want to get out there, and this should raise the Sopranos fans' confidence with the film. The idea of the film has come from the show's creator, David Chase. It's not like some random dude came and said he wants to make a Sopranos movie. The man who created The Sopranos has created this film, and one of the most experienced directors of the series, Alan Taylor, is directing the movie. You would think that the filmmakers know what they're doing and that the project is in safe hands. Of course, one thing likely to throw audiences is seeing younger versions of beloved characters. Much like how many people found it difficult to buy the likes of de-aged Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, 70-year-old men playing 40-year-olds in The Irishman, fans might be distracted and struggle to buy young actors trying to imitate the mannerisms of characters they watched over the course of several years. Michael Gandolfini, playing the role of his father James as Tony Soprano, is likely to be under heavy scrutiny. But it's not impossible for filmmakers to get it right, they just need to make sure they get the casting right. Look at the guy who played a young version of Steve Buscemi's character in Season 5 of Boardwalk Empire. He was perfect. And if they manage to get actors like that, then I'm sure audiences won't have a problem. I'm optimistic about the film. There's no clear red flags, and I hope it will be a good addition to the Sopranos universe. If it didn't exist, I would never ask for it, but since it does, I'll watch it, and I hope it turns out to be a good movie. What do you think? How much are you looking forward to the new Sopranos movie? Do you think it will be good, or do you think they left it too late and shouldn't have bothered? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.